Now, I'm 95 years old. I want you to understand something. When I say I've seen compounding work, I'm not talking about spreadsheets or theoretical models. I'm talking about watching real human lives transform slowly and visibly and then all at once. I bought my first stock in 1942, 11 years old. 3 shares of City Service Preferred at $30 doing odd jobs around Omaha. I was so proud of that. And then the price dropped. Almost immediately, it fell to $27. I watched $33 of my money vanish. I was sick, genuinely sick, but I held. The price climbed back to $40. I sold, made a small profit, walked away feeling rather clever. But here's the thing, and this still bothers me even now at 95. If I had simply held those shares through the following decades, they would have been worth a small fortune. I learned the most expensive lesson of my investing life at 11 years old. I learned what happens when you interrupt compounding. You don't just miss some gains, you reset the entire clock. Reset. In 75 years of investing through 15 recessions, multiple wars, the dot-com collapse, the 2008 crisis, I have never, not once, seen a truly long-term patient investor go permanently broke, not once. The ones who went broke couldn't sit still long enough. The ones who panicked will nature do its slow, quiet, magnificent work. So, let's talk about that work. Right. I want to walk you through 5 areas of your life where compounding is either silently building your future or quietly destroying it, and most people are completely unaware of 4 of them. Pillar 1, the absolute of compounding, why it feels like absolutely nothing is happening. You know, the reason most people fail with compounding isn't greed. It isn't laziness, exactly. It's a mismatch, a profound, frustrating mismatch between the way compounding actually works and the way the human brain expects things to work. See, our brains are wired for linear thinking. Linear, if I walk a mile every day, I expect to be exactly 1 mile farther along each day. Simple, direct, satisfying. If I save $100 a month, I want to see $100 more in my account every month. A clean, predictable line going upward. But compounding doesn't move in a line, it moves in a curve. And in the early stages, that curve is almost completely flat. It feels like nothing, like you're doing everything right. And the universe simply isn't responding. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine you're folding a piece of paper in half. Once, twice, barely thicker. 5 folds in, it's height of finger, still nothing special, boring even. But and stay with me, if you could somehow fold that paper 42 times, that stack would reach from here to the moon. That is what compounding looks like. The first 30 folds feel like absolutely nothing. I call the early phase the valley of disappointment. It's the period, could be months, could be years, when you're doing everything right, staying consistent, staying patient. But the results look ordinary, unimpressive, nothing like the dramatic transformation you expected. Precisely. They look at their portfolio after 2 years and think, I should be further along. They look in the mirror after 3 months of healthy habits and see barely any difference. They look at their career after a year of serious skill building and feel the same. And so they stop. They switch strategies. They try something faster, something more exciting. That whisper of impatience, maybe this isn't working, is the single most dangerous sound in personal finance. The single most dangerous, because the valley of disappointment isn't evidence that compounding has failed you. It's evidence that compounding hasn't finished yet. See, think of it like planting an oak tree. You put that acorn in the ground in spring and nothing visible happens. All summer, nothing above the surface. If you judge by what you could see, you'd say the acorn was dead. You'd dig it up, try a different seed, different soil, maybe give up on trees entirely. But underground, the roots are spreading wide and going deep. The invisible foundation is being laid. And then one morning there's a tiny green shoot, and it seems like it appeared overnight, but it didn't. All the real work happened in the dark, out of sight, while you were frustrated and doubting yourself. While you were doubting, what most people never appreciate is this thing I call mathematical momentum. Once your money or your skills or your reputation or your health reaches a certain critical mass, the growth becomes self-accelerating. The returns start generating their own returns. Skills combine in unexpected ways to create entirely new capabilities. Good habits start making other good habits easier to maintain. And at that point, you're not walking anymore, you're running and then flying. But, and I cannot stress this enough, you have to survive the valley first. You have to survive it. The people I've seen build real lasting wealth weren't the smartest people in the room. They were simply the ones who were still standing after everyone else had given up and gone home, still standing. Wealth whispers before it roars. The wise investor learns to wait in the silence. Pillar 2, financial compounding. Every dollar you own needs a job. All right, now let's get into the area most people think they already understand. Money, specifically. I want to completely reframe the way you think about every single dollar in your possession, because the people who struggle financially tend to think of money as something to consume, something to trade for experiences and objects and comfort, and I understand that impulse. I truly do. But the people who build real fortunes quietly without fanfare, they think about money in a fundamental employee. Every dollar you save is a tiny worker you hire. That worker goes out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no vacation, no sick days, no complaints, no health care costs, and it earns you more money. And if you leave that worker alone long enough, he starts hiring other workers, and those workers hire more. Evan, entire you lifting a finger, but before an army of capital for working for you while you sleep. While you sleep. But here's the brutal truth most people cannot bear to face. Every dollar you spend frivolously as a worker you fire. Not just fire, you fire that worker and his entire future team. Every $100 spent on something you didn't truly need isn't just $100 gone from your life. It's 100 plus everything that $100 could have become over the next 20 or 30 years. At 10% 100, you fired 17 future workers. You didn't just spend $100, you fired 17 future workers, 17. Now, multiply that by every impulsive purchase you made this year. I knew a man in Omaha, hard worker, decent income, generous heart, but every time he got a raise, his lifestyle expanded to match it. Called it big enjoying the fruits of his labor, and I can't say I didn't understand the appeal. He called it 65, he had almost nothing saved. Nothing. Because every time compounding handed him a new employee, he immediately sent that employee to the store and fired him on the way out the door. That's what I call the lifestyle trap. It's quiet, it's comfortable, and it's devastating. Devastating. Now, building margin, this is where most people's thinking is dangerously incomplete, having a financial cushion. Though I prefer to think of it as your fortress wall isn't just about covering unexpected expenses. That's far too small a way to think about it. When the market drops 40%, and it always does, the person with no margin panics and sells. They have to. They genuinely need the money. They were operating on the edge, and one bad month exposed the entire structure. But the person with dry powder, with financial ammunition, with real margin, they buy. They pick up wonderful businesses at clearance sale prices while everyone else is selling in a panic, and 10 years later, they're substantially wealthier, and the panic seller is still trying to recover what they threw away. Margin is also negotiating power, pure, unadorned negotiating power. If you're financially desperate, just to cover your monthly obligations, you cannot negotiate your salary. You cannot walk away from a bad deal. You cannot wait patiently for the right opportunity. You are trapped in the job you may not love because the alternative is falling behind on your bills. But even a modest margin, 3 months of expenses honestly saved, changes your psychology entirely. You walk differently, you negotiate differently, you make decisions from quiet strength rather than quiet desperation. And that psychological confidence, it compounds too, it compounds. Now, the dark mirror of all this, the part nobody discusses at the dinner table, debt, consumer debt is negative compounding. I want you to hear that clearly. Consumer debt is negative compounding. When you borrow money to buy something that loses value, a car you can't truly afford, a vacation charged to a credit card, gadgets bought on layaway for a lifestyle you haven't earned yet, you're not just paying for the thing, you're paying compounding interest. To them, the bank is growing wealthier through compound interest. You're just sitting on the wrong side of the equation. I've never borrowed money to buy a car, not once in 95 years. Some people call that extreme frugality. I call it basic arithmetic because the alternative paying percent interest on an asset that loses value the moment you drive it off the lot is financial self-destruction, slow, polite, socially acceptable self-destruction. If compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world, then compound debt is the eighth circle of financial ruin. The antidote is almost embarrassingly simple, though I won't pretend it's easy. Save more than you spend. Invest the difference. Leave it alone. Repeat for decades. That is the entire system, the whole thing. Pillar 3, professional compounding. Why some careers grow like oak trees. Charlie Munger used to say something I've thought about nearly every day for 50 years. He said the safest way to get what you want is to deserve what you want. That sentence sounds almost too simple. Almost. But it took me a long time to fully understand the weight of it, because what Charlie was really describing was professional compounding, the way that skills, judgment, and reputation stack on top of each other year after year to create something virtually impossible for anyone to replicate quickly. Virtually impossible. Most people leads to job B, leads to job C. Each rung roughly the same height, each salary increase roughly the same percentage. Linear, predictable, safe. But some people, a small number, a genuinely small number, don't climb a ladder. They compound, they develop a skill, then they deliberately develop a second skill that complements the first. The combination creates a capability worth more than either skill alone. They add a third. The three together create something that almost nobody else in their field possesses. I call this skill stacking, and it works precisely like financial compounding. Let me give you an example from my own life. I understood businesses and finance, a solid foundation, but hardly unique. Plenty of people understood those things. But I also understood human psychology. Why people make irrational decisions, what they fear, what they want, what drives them to panic, and what steadies them. And I could communicate. I could explain a complex idea simply. I could write a letter that kept a reader's attention. In plain English, not in the language of the academic. Now, finance plus psychology plus communication, that combination is genuinely rare. And those three skills compounded into something far more valuable than any one of them in isolation. Far more. What's more, and this is the part most career books entirely miss, the combination of skills generates something that no individual skill can create on its own. It generates judgment. Judgment is the ability to see around corners, to know what to do in a situation you've never faced before, to sense when something is wrong before the data confirms it, to recognize a good deal when nobody else is paying attention. You cannot download judgment. You cannot take a weekend course in it. You cannot fake it convincingly for very long. It compounds slowly, quietly over decades of serious, consistent work in a domain you genuinely care about. This is why I feel genuine sympathy for people who hop between industries every two or chasing marginally better salaries. I understand the immediate logic short term. It sometimes works, but long term, they keep resetting their compound curve every time they jump to a completely different field. They return to the beginning of the compounding arc, back in the valley of disappointment, again and again, never letting the curve do its magnificent work. Meanwhile, the person who stays in one industry for 20 years, who has seen every flavor of problem, knows every significant player, remembers what happened the last 3 times this particular situation arose, that person becomes something that cannot be priced, easily indispensable, irreplaceable. Then there's reputation. Charlie always said reputation takes 20 years to build and 5 minutes to destroy. Your professional reputation is arguably your most powerful compounding asset, more powerful than your degree, more powerful than your current salary or title. Because your reputation walks into every room before you do. It opens doors you haven't approached yet. It introduces you to people you haven't met. People who guard their reputation like a fortress, who do exactly what they say they'll do, who tell the truth even when it costs them something, who show up with consistency and care over years and decades. Those people generate a return on their character that no investment account can fully replicate. Their word is accepted without verification. Their judgment is sought out rather than sold. Their name opens doors, and all of that, every bit of it, is the result of compounding. Your reputation is invisible silently, paying dividends no bank can match. Pillar 4, biological compounding, the account your body keeps, whether you wanted to or not. Now, I want to discuss something that rarely comes up when people talk about wealth building, but I believe it absolutely should. It should. Your body and your daily habit. Everything I've described so far, the financial compounding, the reputation building, all of it requires one foundational thing that most people quietly take for granted. It requires you to be here in good enough health, with enough energy, with a mind that still functions at a high level. Biological compounding is real, and it operates in both directions exactly like money. Exactly. Every time you exercise consistently, you're not just burning calories or building biological account. Your cardiovascular system gets fractionally more efficient. Your mitochondria become more numerous and more productive. Your insulin response improves incrementally. Your brain, and this matters enormously for everything else we've discussed today, your brain gets incrementally sharper, more resilient, better at managing stress. None of those changes are visible day to day. None. You won't feel the difference between today's self and yesterday's self. But compounded over 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, the person who made those deposits consistently moves differently, thinks differently, and often looks a decade younger than their chronological age. I've known men who were sharp and energetic in their 80s because they made small, consistent deposits starting in their 40s. And I've known men who were declining painfully in their early 60s because they made small, consistent withdrawals during those same years. Same basic biological equipment, completely different trajectories building. You can't see it happening. Your friends can't see it. Nobody gives you an award for it. The scale doesn't move dramatically overnight. The mirror doesn't show you a transformation every week. But the foundation is there underneath, going deeper, getting stronger every single day that you make the right choice. And one morning, years from now, you wake up and realize you feel genuinely good. Not just today, you generally feel good. You have energy, your mind is clear, and the people around you who didn't build that foundation, they're managing things, they're tired, they're declining. Here's what you must understand about delayed physical transformation. MC1, the body, like a good investment, doesn't reward impatience. Someone who starts eating well and moving consistently at 40, the results at 50, at 60, at 70, those results can be genuinely remarkable because the biology was doing its invisible work all along, just like the money, just like the skills. But now the warning, because there is a dark side to biological compounding, and I need you to take this seriously. It works exactly like negative financial compounding applied to the body. Every night you consistently sacrifice sleep, you make a small biological withdrawal. Every meal of highly processed, nutrient-empty food is a withdrawal. Every year of managed but undressed chronic stress. Every stretch of prolonged physical inactivity. Small amounts, each one individually barely noticeable, but they compound, and 15, 20 years later, the account is deeply in the red. And at that point, you're not trying to get healthy, you're trying to climb out of a hole that took 2 decades to dig. It is possible. The human body has remarkable regenerative properties, but it is vastly harder than simply not digging the hole in the first place. Your daily habits are not neutral. They are never neutral. Every single day, they are either compounding in your favor or compounding against you. There is no standing still. There is no pause button. The machine is always running, always. Pillar 5, the everyday compounding protocol, how to make the machine run without needing your willpower every day. All right, we've covered the 5 areas of life where compounding operates. Now, I want to spend some time on something practical, something you can actually apply starting tomorrow morning, because understanding that compounding is powerful is one thing. Building a daily life that puts compounding on autopilot. So it runs whether you're motivated or not. That's the real game. That's the difference between the person who understands wealth building and the person who actually builds it. Let's start with how you measure progress. Most people measure their compounding journey in entirely the wrong units. They look at their account after 1 month of disciplined saving and think, this isn't moving fast enough. They check the mirror after 2 weeks of changed habits and think, I don't see anything. They review their career after a year and think, I'm barely further along. They are measuring a decade-long process in month-long increments. That is like trying to watch the hour hand on a clock move. Stand there and stare at it. You cannot see any movement, but leave the room. Come back in 60 minutes in a completely different position. The movement was real and constant. You simply weren't watching at the right scale. The correct measurement unit for compounding is years, not am I richer than last month. The right question, the only question that actually matters is, am I building the right behaviors and systems today that will make this area of my life dramatically different in 10 years? Those are completely different questions, and they produce completely different lives. Now, the rule that most people violate constantly, often without realizing it, avoid interrupting the process. In finance, interrupting the process means panic selling. It means raiding your retirement account for something that wasn't a genuine emergency. It means checking your portfolio every single day and making emotional decisions based on market noise that has nothing whatsoever to do with the long-term value of what you own. In health, interrupting the process means the exhausting cycle of starting and stopping, 3 weeks of discipline and 6 weeks of abandonment. Back to square one on January 2nd, gone by February. Each restart costs you more than you realize, because you're not just losing the progress you made, you're losing the compounding effect of that progress on top of more progress. Charlie put it beautifully. He said the big money, the real money, isn't in the buying and selling, it's in the waiting. The waiting. And that's true in every domain of your life. The life-changing results aren't in the starting. Anyone can start. The results are in the not stopping. They're in the not stopping. Now, let me share a principle that I believe contradicts almost everything the modern world tells you. It doesn't matter how fast you're moving, it matters which direction you're pointed. A person who saves $75 a month consistently for 40 years will outperform a person who saves $3,000 in a burst of inspired motivation and then stops for a decade. The direction, the unbroken trajectory toward the goal matters. This is profoundly counterintuitive. Our culture worships speed, the hustle. The 5 like 0 to a.m., wake up in the 16-hour day and the grind until you break ethic. But compounding doesn't care about your grind. Compounding cares about your 4 o'clock a.m. wake up, about whether you're still showing up, still pointed in the right direction 3 decades from now when the curve finally goes exponential. Are you? Honestly, that question matters more than anything else I've said today. This brings me to the final piece of the everyday compounding protocol. And honestly, I believe this might be the most important practical insight I can share. Systems and autopilot. Here's the fundamental problem with willpower. Willpower is a finite, depletable resource. Every decision you make during a day, from what to eat for breakfast to whether to reply to an email, costs a small amount of it. By late afternoon, most people are running on fumes, and that's precisely when the bad financial decisions happen. The impulsive purchases, the skipped workout, the late night that ruins tomorrow's energy and focus. If your financial health, your career growth, and your physical health all depend on daily willpower, you're eventually going to fail. Not because you're weak, because you're human. We all are. MC14, the solution, and this is something I figured out very early, and it has paid me back 1,000-fold, is to engineer your life so that the right behaviors happen automatically without requiring a decision, without requiring motivation. Pay yourself first, before rent, before groceries, before any discretionary spending. The money goes into your fortress. Set up automatic contributions to your investment account so the transfer happens before you ever see the cash in your checking account. Make the right choice, the default choice, the one that happens if you do nothing at all in your career. Protect specific time each week for deliberate skill development, not offline time when things slow down. Things never slow down. Schedule it. Put it on the calendar like an appointment with the most important person in your life. Because in a real sense, it is for your health, structure, your environment. So the easiest option is also the reasonable option. Don't rely on discipline at 9 p.m. when you're exhausted. Rely on the system you built at 9 when your mind was fresh and you were thinking clearly. When you automate the right behaviors, you remove the daily battle against willpower entirely. The system runs with or without your enthusiasm. The compounding just continues quietly, invisibly, relentlessly. Now, let me tell you something I want you to carry with you long after this video ends. In 75 years of investing, I have never once lost sleep worrying about a patiently held, well-understood financial fortress. Not once. Not during Black Monday in 1987 when the market dropped 23% in a single day. Not when the dot-com bubble burst and took 80% of certain portfolios with it. Not in 2008 when the entire global financial system appeared to be unraveling and serious. Intelligent people were genuinely terrified. You know why? Because I understood what I owned. I understood the businesses behind the numbers. I understood the power of the force working on my behalf. And I understood with absolute certainty, built from decades of observation, that the same compounding that had built my fortress would continue building it regardless of what the market did on any given Tuesday. That is the ultimate gift of compounding. Not just wealth, not just financial security. It gives you something the speculators, the day trader, the at midnight watching ticker symbols with knots in their stomachs, it gives you something they will never have. It gives you sleep. And at 95 years old, I'll tell you plainly that sleep is worth more to me than any rate of return I've ever earned. So here's what I want to leave you with today. The 5 areas we've covered: the nature of financial habits, your professional skills, your biological health, and your daily systems. They are not separate things. They are one thing. They are one interconnected, mutually reinforcing compounding machine. When you protect your health, you protect your ability to think clearly enough to build wealth. When you build wealth, you reduce the financial desperation that leads to the worst career decision. When you build a great career through skill stacking and reputation, you generate the income that fuels the financial compounding. And when your systems run on autopilot, all of it continues without requiring daily part. Now, you might be thinking, I'm already 40. I'm already 50. I've lost some time. I've made some mistakes, lost some time. Maybe is it genuinely too late? No, it is not. It is never too late to point the arrow in the right direction. Never. The best time to plant an oak tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. Today, this moment, the compounding will begin the second you do. It will be invisible at first, frustrating perhaps. You'll be in the valley, but it will be working. It is always working. As long as you don't stop it, start building. Don't stop. Trust the curve and sleep well tonight. That is the whole philosophy. That is it. If today gave you something, a new way to see your money, your career, your body, your habits, then do me one favor. Hit the like button for the Value Fortress. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe it's a young person who has time on their side and doesn't yet realize how extraordinary that is. Maybe it's someone your own age who has quietly given up, who needs to know it's not too late. Subscribe to the Value Fortress if you want to keep building brick by brick, idea by idea, toward a life where money is no longer the source of your anxiety, where you make decisions from strength, not desperation, where you sleep. Because here at the Value Fortress, we believe in one thing above all others. A high IQ doesn't guarantee wealth. Emotional stoicism does. I'll see you in the next one. We're just getting started.